Okay, good morning, everyone. 1 second here. We'll be getting started. Had to assist a few people in getting into the call this morning. So give me a second here. I'm waiting for this thing to populate. There you go. Okay, good morning, everyone. 1 second here. Let me give my YouTube greeters, followers a greeting. Technology is our friend, but it works on its own terms. I apologize for those who have had difficulty getting in, but for some reason, some of you are not getting the email. It comes out a standard email should hit your email at 7:55 every Sunday morning. And then I attempt to send a one out like maybe 5 or 10 minutes before the hour. So we'll have to figure that out. But we're gonna get ready to move on to today's message. Happy New Year's, New Year to each of you that are joining me this morning. While I set a couple things up, go ahead and drop your greetings in, your salutations, let people know how you're doing. Good to see you got in there, Miss House. Awesome, awesome. Good, good. And let me get this squared away right quick, and we're going to jump right into this morning's topic. For each of you who are here this morning, I'm so excited that you've decided to start this year with us. And I pray that this year will be as fruitful as the years that you've been joining us. Good. Awesome. Look like everybody here is here that's going to get here. And can somebody type in, make sure my volume is loud enough? If you could do that for me, I'd appreciate that. Good morning, Myrna. Good morning, Miss House. Good morning, Al. Good morning, Mom. Good morning, Carolyn. I know Cheryl may be attempting to get in through the YouTube channel. I know she was having some challenges. Um, so we're going to get started. Let's just reset ourselves this morning. Just getting quiet, becoming present to where we are, to the gift that life has given us. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Serendipity Sunday. Welcome to this morning's time together. I pray that you had a wonderful New Year celebration as you stepped over the threshold into this Gregorian calendar New Year. We know the New Year actually starts with the spring. And for those of you who are living your life in sync with that, be mindful of that. We celebrate the Gregorian calendar, which says January 1st is the first of the year. So we live in two worlds, actually three worlds. So we just have to be cognizant of what we want to celebrate. Again, I'm Greg Stanton, also known as Asar. I'm your metaphysical mystic. To each of you who are listening this morning, I am grateful that you're in this sacred space for a community that's grounded in principle and for a shared commitment to truth that liberates rather than binds. You know, we live in a time when remembering feels urgent, but understanding has become what I like to say optional. So today's message is titled Sankofa is not nostalgia, the ethics of remembering and the freedom of the future. So this message is not about necessarily revisiting the past for its own sake. It's about how we remember, how we carry, and what we are finally willing to release. Yes, what we remember, how we carry the things we remember, and what we are finally willing to release. And I pray that today there'll be some things in your reflection that you will consider no longer serves your highest and greatest good. One of the premises of today's message is that we often receive without understanding. And so Sankofa is one of the most recognized symbols in African consciousness today. If you got the email from me, you saw the picture of the Sankofa bird. And most of you who are familiar with the term so Sankofa know it's the bird that's looking back with the egg in its mouth. So this term emerges from the Akan people of West Africa, not as decoration, but as a philosophical principle that's encoded in symbol. It is quoted, it's worn, it's celebrated. What's often missed is this. Sankofa does not stand alone. It is shaped by the same African civilization or civilizational logic first articulated in the Nile Valley and later preserved, encoded, and through the Akan philosophy. Many people have no understanding that the Akan are direct descendants of the Kemetic or the Nile Valley, their Nile Valley ancestors. They made that track across west towards West Africa as a result of a number of things, one of which was the great migration of the foreigners coming from the north and coming from the east, and they began to move away from that. Although it's a different geography and it has different symbols than Kemet, the same underlying intelligence can be found. Where the Nile Valley introduces or articulated truth through cosmology, principle, and moral order, the Akan preserved the same with intelligence through proverbs, symbols, and communal memory. Now, the Nile Valley civilizations probably had proverbs also, but because we don't have the language, we don't have this, understand the Medeneter, we can look at this contemporary culture known as the Akan culture, and we can begin to trace the breadcrumbs back. So this morning, I want to begin with a gentle but honest observation. And that is Sankofa has been received, but not fully understood. I run into people all the time that will talk about Sankofa, meaning look back or go back and fetch it. Because many of us are not simply looking back, we have to be conscious of this. We are carrying questions, questions about our identity, questions about our faith, questions about what we inherited and whether it still aligns with truth. In spiritual science, divine science, in the what I like to call new thought and now thought, we're reminded of something essential. And we're reminded of this simple truth that truth is not inherited, it is understood. So today is not about nostalgia. Although, oftentimes I speak of cultural things, but sometimes people interpret it that I'm just being nostalgic. It's really about reflection as a spiritual discipline. So we want to kind of understand this morning. I want you to walk away with an understanding of what Sankofa actually means and what it demands. Sankofa does not mean go back and stay. And when we think about going back, we are or looking back, we often reminded of the story of Lot's wife, who not only did she look back, but she turned back and she longed for it. But Sankofa is a concept that means to retrieve what is true so you can move forward free. Okay? We want to retrieve what is true so you can move forward free. So Kofa assumes something mature, that not everything carried forward deserves to be carried further. Let me say that again. Not everything that is carried forward deserves to be carried further. And this brings us to the three truths that I want to highlight this morning. The three truths that Sankofa requires us to face honestly. Before we move any further, let us be precise. Sankofa is not about defending the past, or is it about condemning it? It's about examining what was carried forward, testing it against truth, and releasing what no longer aligns. And here we are at the front side of the new Gregorian year, 2026, at the beginning of a year that has a energy of one, of new beginning. And what better way to start by looking back, but not going back, but by looking and examining what has gone before us in the past and carry forward only those things that we find to be tested, tried, and true. And then we're going to be very conscientious early in this year. What things no longer serve us and things that we no longer want to continue to do. I want you to be mindful of that. So, of the three truths, truth one, not all memory is true. Think about that. Not everything you remember, you recall is true. Over the course of time, we embellish the things that has transpired in our lives. We can make them worse, we can make them better. We can romanticize them, or we can traumatize them. So memory is powerful. It's part of our belief system. And the scripture said, this is done to you unto you as you believe. So memory is powerful, but memory also is not neutral. Memory can be shaped by trauma. Memory can be shaped by institutions, which happen frequently. Memory can be shaped by repetition until it feels authoritative. Now, a people can remember faithfully and still remember incorrectly. Do you grasp that? You can remember something faithfully and still remember it incorrectly. And this is where we must be especially careful. There is a difference between reflection and revisionism. Revisionist history does not seek truth, it seeks comfort. It minimizes harm, it softens disruptions, or it glamorizes the past in ways that protect the present. Now, Sankofa does not allow us to rewrite history to feel better about it. It requires that we remember truthfully, even when the truth is uncomfortable. Let me give you an example. When the brutality of enslavement is minimized, or when survival is romanticized as through suffering, as though the suffering were somehow formative or beneficial, memory has shifted from truth to comfort, of a way of making sense of it. Sankofa, on the other hand, refuses both erasure and glamour. It insists that dignity is restored by truth, not by editing the record, as in revisionist, be it glamorization or be it the traumatic, looking at it from the terrible place and even making it worse. This is also where something we experience psychologically comes into play when we talk about looking back to fetch and go forward. What is often called cognitive dissonance. Say that with me. Cognitive dissonance. So, cognitive dissonance is the tension that we feel when truth challenges what we have already accepted, defended, or even organized into our lives. And we're having a hard time accepting this truth, or we may want to accept the truth, but we are having a cognitive dissonance. We're going back and forth in our minds. And that's something we have to deal with. Rather than change what is misaligned, we often change the story because changing the story feels safer than changing ourselves. When we examine this tension, the tension keeps us loyal to ideas, histories, and practices that no longer represent our highest good, simply because letting go will require honesty, courage, and reorientation. Now, in the conversation of transformation that I'm inside of, that I lead, the biggest challenge that I find is this concept of cognitive dissonance. Many individuals are seeking to move into a deeper level of spirituality, a oneness of being with Source, the Creator, but they have a difficult time because they're still holding on. They're still looking back at that which was given them. Maybe it was a particular denominational stance or spiritual practice given by a grandmother, a grandfather, or a community, but we never examined it, and we have to move away from that. Again, we got to examine it. We got to examine the ideas, the histories, and the practices that no longer represent our highest good. And how do you know it doesn't represent your highest good? It's not working. It doesn't feel good. Okay, it doesn't bring joy. So simply because letting go will require honesty, courage, and reorientation, many never do it. So Sankofa does not ask, what do you remember? It asks a deeper question, a question that I'm asking each of you this morning. Is what you remember aligned with truth? Is what you recalling aligning with the truths you encounter when you engage me? Now, if memory produces imbalance, it is not honored, it is corrected. Now, what we believe or what belief about who I am or where I come from have I never personally verified, only inherited? This is a constant question that I reflect upon. And I would like you to reflect upon that also. So here's the reflection this week. What belief about who I am, okay, or where I come from, have I never personally verified, okay, only inherited? I'm going to drop that over there. Um, so that's something you can copy and you can think about. So when we look at divine science, when we look at new thought, be it unity, be it science of mind, even non-thought, truth does not fear examination. If memory must be examined, the next question becomes this: what do we do with what we have been repeatedly taught to preserve? That's not rhetorical. That is a question that we must answer to move forward. To move forward in the second truth this morning. The second truth is that not all tradition is aligned. Okay, so this comes right on the heel of our first truth. Truth one is not all memory is truth. So I want you to know that not all memory that you have is truth. That's the first truth for today. The second truth for today is truth two. Not all tradition is aligned. Now, say that with me. I want you to say it. Not all tradition is aligned. Now, tradition can be beautiful, can be powerful, but tradition can also survive simply because it's gone unquestioned and is having us continue to do the same thing over and over. Some tradition remain not because they are life-giving, but because questioning them once felt dangerous. Or when you questioned them early in life, the response you got from the elder or from someone who returned you back to it. Sankofa, on the other hand, does not require unquestioned loyalty to everything that is inherited. It requires alignment with principle. That is alignment with the principle. In New Thought, divine science, we don't teach blind belief. We teach understanding or present understanding. In other words, in what we call noun thought or divine science, or unity. We're invited to know why we believe what we believe. Traditional religion don't necessarily want you to know why you believe. It just asks you to believe blindly. It encourages us. That is, when we're looking at transformational teaching, encourages us to question, to inquire, to seek meaning rather than simply repeat inherited ideas. And many times people are just repeating through rote what was given to them. And many times they don't even have the slightest clue of what the meaning is. Understanding in this tradition means grasping the principle, not just accepting words, not just because I said and it settles it. It means fact checking. It means getting the receipts to to uh, uh, to substantiate what it is you say you believe. It means allowing truth to become conscious, lived, and demonstrable. That you're demonstrating it in our daily lives. For some of us, this shows up in faith practices. We repeat faithfully, yet no longer understand. We attend, that is church, or some large group setting. We recite, we respond, but information don't lead to transformation. And then when we do those things, we have transformation that feels distant. Let me give you an example. Many of us still organize our lives around practices that once served a purpose, but no longer produce clarity or growth, showing up out of habit, repeating words again, rote, measuring success by busyness rather than meaning. We do this in modern ways as well. Many of us still use or rely on outdated methods simply because they're familiar, such as endlessly searching through browsers and links for answers. And some still use the phone book or call other people for the how to get there, how to do this. When you use tools like AI language models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, they help us to think, synthesize, and discern more intelligently, and it saves us a lot of time. But many people are still pushing back. And they're pushing back not just out of ignorance of what's available to them, but they're pushing back because it's going against the grain of the familiar. So we have to understand that what once awakened consciousness now merely fills space, consuming energy without yielding transformation. And this is not because those practices were wrong or necessarily are wrong. You can still use a browser. You can still use the yellow pages, but they don't really represent your highest and greatest good, the maximization of your time. But because they were right for a different time, we tend to hold on to them. Sankofa asks us very gently but firmly, is this practice still aligned or or merely familiar? This thing that I'm looking back, do I need to bring it forward? Here's a reflection for you this week. I ask that you reflect on this. This reflection is, what tradition in my life do I follow because it's familiar? Okay. And not because it's freeing. Can you think of a tradition in your life right now? You don't have to share it, but perhaps you'll share it in the green room later. What tradition in your life do you follow because it's familiar and not because it's freeing? I'm reminded of a story of a client I had who was telling me about somehow it came up about Thanksgiving. And oh yeah, yeah, I remember. She was talking about Thanksgiving and how, it's such a task for her. And I asked her why, and she said, because, I got a large family, and so I usually buy a rather large turkey. And I remember my mom doing the same. And I remember that my mom used to cut it down the middle and then cook both pieces separately. And I looked at her and I said, Why did she do that?" And she said, "I don't know, but I do the same thing. Even though I got this huge oven that I could really put it all into it in one big piece, but I'm cutting it in half." I said, "Have you ever asked your mom why she um, will go about this process?" And she said, "No." I said, "Well, is your mom available? Let's call her now." So we got on the phone and she greeted her mom and told her, "Hey, I'm here and I'm talking to a friend of mine." Now, she know what her mom knows, she was in therapy. And she says, "Why did you cut the turkey down the middle and cook it in two pieces?" And she said, "I don't know. I think I did because that's the way my mom used to do it. So which would be her grandma." And so I said, "Can we get her on the phone?" And she said, "Yeah." So we got a three-way going and found out the grandmom got on the phone and said, "Baby, you know why I cut that turkey in half. Didn't I tell you?" She said, "No, you never told me, Ma." And she went on to say that she cut the turkey in half because she had a very small oven that couldn't cook it all in one piece. And so here we see have a tradition coming forth without understanding. And so even from that moment, we come away with the understanding that what we hold in traditions in our lives, we do so only because it's familiar to the process and not necessarily because it's the right process. And so we have to remember alignment is not about rebellion. It's spiritual maturity. It's about not just saying I disregard the past, but I'm looking at it to see, does it serve my highest and greatest good in this moment called the present? When memory has been tested and tradition has been examined, we must face one more reality. Some things were never passed down whole. Let me say that again. Some things were never passed down whole. We got them incomplete. And so we have to begin to identify what things have been passed to me, but they have not been fully explained to me, or they didn't come complete. Nothing worse than getting a new gift or something that you have to put together and something is missing out of it, an essential ingredient. Now, so truth three. Truth three is this. Not all inheritances is intact. Not everything that we inherit is intact. Not all truths that we receive are received intact, fully. So here we must especially, uh, we got to be especially gentle and honest with ourselves. Disruption interrupts transmission. Think about that. Disruption interrupts transmission. And for people of an African descent in the diaspora, it's this major disruption that has interrupted the transmission, such as enslavement, disruption, segregation, disruption, miseducation, a big disruption, and distorted theology. All of these are disruptions. These did not only limit opportunity, they have fractured our memories. So when we talk about Sankofa, it never assumes inheritance arrived whole. Sometimes retrieval requires reconstruction. And part of the reconstruction starts with the deconstruction. Sometimes it requires letting go of certainty that was never earned. And how many of us can remember when we used to espouse a certain belief with a certainty, but it was never earned? But when we learned that it was not a truth, such as the tooth fairy or such as um, Santa Claus bringing gifts down our chimney and we didn't have a chimney, it required that we let go of it. Okay, so sometimes reconstruction requires letting go of certainty that was never earned. And when you encounter someone who are positioned with the certainty that they've never checked out, it can be quite disturbing. But it also should be looked at as perhaps you were once there yourself. Let me give you an example of this third truth. Many of us were taught fragments of spiritual truths, scripture without context, history without origin, doctrine without philosophy. Sankofa invites us to retrieve the missing pieces rather than pretend the fragments were whole. We do a lot of pretending. We do a lot of leaving our hats at the door, our thinking caps at the door when we go into large groups thinking, when we enter into our large group meetings or our communal settings. We allow things to continue to be carried forward that need to stop right here. So, principles, when we look at principle, does not diminish when examined. When we examine a principle, it does not cause it to diminish. What it does is it clarifies. And as clarity increases, more relevant practice naturally evolve. That's called transformation. That's called transmuting what was into something that is to be. Now, here's another reflection for you to take into this week. This reflection, simply stated, is what wisdom do I sense belongs to me that I was never properly taught? Let me drop that in there. What wisdom, I want you to ask yourself, what wisdom do I sense innately belongs to me that I was never properly taught? See, reconstruction is not failure. It is fidelity to truth. Taken together, these three truths demand a redefinition of Sankofa itself. Sankofa as correction and not comfort. For many of us, when we talk about Sankofa, is talking about looking back into our perceived historical past, and where do we get the narratives from? Where do we get the images from? When many people look back, they only see enslavement, they only see Kunta Kinte, they only see the Middle Passage. They can't look into the depth of the Congo, or they can't look to the valley, the Nile Valley, where the civilization began. Okay, so we have to realize that Sankofa doesn't mean looking back, turning back, fetching something that has no relevance to us in today. Sankofa asks correction, not comfort. And so when you hear the word Sankofa, I want you to think about Sankofa as correction and not comfort. Okay? And you may be the only one who's doing this, but it's about your personal evolving. Sankofa is not comfort driven. And many people don't want to look back at the past, the distant past or the recent past, because it is painful. And so Sankofa says you don't just look back because it's comfort driven, but you want to understand it is truth governed. We look back to grasp the truth, to grasp the meaning, to know what should come forward, to get the meat and leave the bones. When guided by truth, Sankofa does something. And that something that it does is it restores. When guided by familiarity, it simply repeats. And too often we look back from a familiar, from a family pattern, and we repeat it. Sankofa retrieves wisdom, not nostalgia. You get that? Sankofa retrieves wisdom and not nostalgia. And for many of us, this time of the year, when we do things like Kwanzaa, when we hear the term Sankofa, we're not even looking at the wisdom of it. We're looking at the nostalgia of it. We're identifying with Africa. We're identifying perhaps with the Western culture, the Ndinkra symbols that we all are familiar with. Now, here's another prompt for you that I would like you to integrate in your life this week. And the prompt is, if I look back honestly, what, look back honestly, the one thing I must stop carrying forward unquestioned is, okay, I'll put it right there for you. If I look back honestly, the one thing I must stop carrying forward unquestioned is what? For me, um, mine is I don't carry scripture forward that comes to mind in an unquestioned way. I deconstruct it and I reconstruct it inside of my principles and practices that I try and true. So what you're going to find is once Sankofa is understood as correction rather than comfort, a new kind of forward moving becomes possible. You're looking back to move forward. You're not looking back in nostalgia. You're not looking back in glamorization. You're not looking back to rehearse traumatization, but you're looking back to move forward. So, inside of what we call transformational teaching, we teach that we move forward through understanding, not accumulation, not recapitulating the past, not a regurgitating that which has been given to us that has no more nutrients to us. Sankofa agrees. We don't ask the past to validate us. We ask it to instruct us. When the scripture says, honor thy mother and thy father that your days may be long in the earth, it doesn't mean adoration, but it means to look at what their experiences was, that you don't have to repeat patterns. And with that being broken, then your life is elongated. If you look back and you see if we ate certain things and it caused certain diseases and disorders to come forward, we stop. Even though culturally that was part of the culture. Like the in most Africans, we eat African Americans not as frequently as we our predecessors and our mothers and fathers. They ate low on the hog. And we began to glamorize it, and to call it soul food. We began to call it comfort food, but we don't understand it was the only food that they had. They made do with what they had that they could survive. But it wasn't the best food, but it was enough to keep us alive. So we carry forward only that which aligns with truth. So reflection is not delay. I want your reflections to become discernment. When you're looking back, when you're taking time to look back, it's not a delay, it's a discernment. It's a time of discernment. I want you to hold on to that. So, as we prepare to close this morning, we gather these insights into one clear realization. And that is, Sankofa is not about honoring the past, it's about aligning with what has always been true. The future does not need us to remember more, it needs us to remember more truthfully. And when memory is examined, tradition is tested and inheritance is repaired. looking back, does exactly what it was meant to do. It frees the future. How you like that? I hope you got something out of that. So as we prepare to wrap up, I may give you our closing prayer this morning. And going to the green room, this is that place in our time together that I open up a portal. And this portal allows you to sow a seed into this ministry that we can continue to do the work of the ministry and that we can upgrade things and we can do what is necessary and that the resources are there. Now, I don't ask because I have a need or for ministerial greed. I ask because it lets you know that here's an opportunity that if you've found value in something I've said today, or value in something I've said consistently in days gone by, then consider sowing a seed. I know some of you have been coming for quite a time. You're watching the YouTube videos, you're getting them on replays, and you've never taken that next step to say, I'm down with that. And the way you do that is by affirming to yourself that this is a valuable truth. And we know everything that its value costs us something. It could be our time, it could be our resources, it could be the dying of an old way to a new way. So this morning, as the portal is open where you can sow into this ministry, we welcome that. If you desire to give, you can transmute it to the ministry by Cash App, or you can do it by way of the Zelle, or you can go to the website. If you're going to use Zelle or the Cash App, go use the number, and someone can put this in for me, 708-368. 1076. Again, 708-368-1076. Or you can go to the website Soulutions, that's SOUL, Solutions for Living, one word.com, and find the giving tab. And you can find there ways in which you can transmute that which is in your possession into the possession of the ministry. And so we thank you. So this morning, as you give, I want you to take in your mind's eye that which you desire to give. And you say with me, in my hand, I hold my seed. I'm sowing my seed, not for greed, but I sow that it may grow and that it will prosper those that is sent to and that it will come back to me. For the truth is, as I give, I open a portal to receive. And as I receive, I don't hoard, but I circulate, 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 circulate. Thank you for participating in our offertory today. Now, our closing um, affirmative prayer this morning. If you would just take a big breath in, you can close your eyes as I pray. We turn within to the one presence, the one truth, the one intelligence, always active in our lives. We affirm that truth is not lost in the past, nor hidden in memory, but present and available now. We declare that our remembering is guided by wisdom, our reflection by understanding, and our discernment by principle. We release what no longer aligns, and we welcome what is true. As we remember rightly, we move forward freely, and as we align with truth, the further open or the future opens for us with clarity and with peace. We give thanks this morning for insight received and wisdom reclaimed. And so it is. Ashe. Amen. The past is only useful when it remembers correctly. Sankofa. All right, guys. It's wonderful that you all came out today. I appreciate that. Due to the sake of time, I have to speak somewhere and I need to assist someone else this morning. We're gonna forego the green room today experience. But if you have a question, you could text it to me at the same number that you made your offering to, or you can just join us on Tuesday night, and we're gonna do a deeper dive into the concept of Sankofa. There are going to be some interesting things that you may not be aware of that I'm going to share with you. And so until we meet again, until we greet one another again, be blessed and know you do look back, not to fetch it always, but to catch it, to understand what it was about, and to determine if this, which I'm looking back, should be carried further into the future or to let it go there. All right, that's all I have. I'll see you guys on tomorrow morning, Monday morning. Here, there we have our Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Central Standard Time, our morning reflections. And I want to thank each of you that are on the call, that sent cards, well wishes, texts, blessings. I appreciate all of you for all that you do. And so I want to say thank you as I celebrated my 66th birthday on January 2nd. Had a wonderful time, and I thank again all of you for the well wishes in whatever form it may have came in. Thank you very much. Well, that's all I have today. I'm going to move on, and I'll see you guys on the next telecast or broadcast. Peace.